Raph might be an apology for a wee bit of lateness, and Pauline might be as well.
A wee bit of lateness. Well, I'm hoping it's a wee bit. It's only a wee bit. Okay, so welcome back. First up, Daniella. Welcome. Have you been here for any of this, Daniella?
No.
Okay, so basically you can use the time and you've got 10 minutes in whatever way you want. So you can speak to your submission, or you can just wait for questions, or you can, however you feel like.
Yes, sure. Am I all right with the microphone like this?
Yep.
Is it on?
Yep, it's on as far as it,
Can you hear
as
me?
it goes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few things. Yeah. Okay.
Go for it. Yep.
Yeah, well, kia ora tātou. I've lived in central Christchurch for about 30 years, and most of those in the same lower income area towards the east. And prior to that, I'd lived in other places, foreign places, as well as the North Island, and I grew up in Italy. And someone else actually pointed out an article in the press reporting how a very low number of submissions had been received on the representation review. And so I made a brief submission, including the only points I could comment on. There were only a few that I felt I could comment on, and I'd like to speak to those. Well, I and others would have liked an opportunity to hear some debate in public meetings about this consultation to better understand the issues. I spoke to a number of people around me, geographically and sort of across town. I spoke to a few people, and the ones I spoke to felt they didn't have enough information and no chance to ask questions or understand the reasons for the proposals. And also it was pointed out to me, and I've observed it myself, that many people, and not only in our area, are still struggling through post-earthquake rebuild or repair and the flow-on effects of that. Many feel overwhelmed by the speed of change, the lack of stability, and feel either unable to fully engage in the democratic process, or they feel that their views are not going to be listened to anyway, and some refer to previous things that have happened in very quick succession after the earthquakes. So wanted to mention that as a possible reason for paucity of submissions. And it is a concern of mine that not enough people are engaging in this sort of democratic debate. As regards the number of councillors, I'm fully aware of the need to limit the size of council for different reasons, and not only for costs reason, for other reasons as well, workability of the committee, etc. But I feel the current proposal, that's to elect only one councillor per ward, effectively would be a first-past-the-post system, would not improve representation. One councillor per ward would not allow for differences of opinion within each ward to be represented. And we need minority views, and not token representation from what could be easily identifiable new minority groups, but we need representatives of ways of thinking that are different from those of the majority. And if we think of Parliament as an example, in Parliament we've had valuable contributions from smaller parties, made by the smaller parties, whether we agree with them or not. And think of, for example, contributions made by groups like the Green Party, the Māori Party, New Zealand First. They're all small parties, but they have made important contributions. And we need those views. We need to hear those views to put forward different ways of examining issues, to enable more effective critical evaluation of issues and ultimately better decision making. So I don't think it would be an advantage to have 16 wards as opposed to the current 7. I would like to suggest that we have fewer wards, or stick to the current number of wards, and continue to elect 2 councillors from each ward. The question about the proposed boundaries, the question said specifically, will the proposed boundaries reflect your community and or your communities of interest? I felt that question was a very important one. But again, I've been unable to gather enough information and unable to get a sufficient discussion with others to make an informed contribution on this. All I can say is that I would expect we will need a very careful, detailed look at census information, as well as information on current, and then updated information, and information on current trends and expected changes in population movement, population density, and the profiles of those populations to even start looking at this question. And just another small point on the issue of the proposed amalgamation of Sumner and Banks Peninsula. I can only say that I suspect that Sumner, which is a coastal city suburb, and most of Banks Peninsula, which is made up of isolated settlements, do not have much in common. I don't live anywhere near these places, but from what I know of them, this is my understanding. And in fact, maybe better to have a separate ward covering what is essentially a rural area with special characteristics. That's all I wanted to say today.
Thank you very much indeed,
Thank
Daniella. That was actually incredibly thoughtful. Thank you. Is there questions at all? Yanni.
Thank you, Daniella. Thank you for your submission. If we stuck with the current wards, and in fact some people have said we should even go bigger and just elect 3 councillors across that system, how do we ensure that the areas, the communities that have low voter turnout are represented around the council table, which traditionally have been those lower socioeconomic areas? So if you take the old ward that I used to represent, which was Hagley Ward, it had a voter turnout of 35%. It went from Hagley Park to Aldwins Road. When it combined with Ferry Mid Ward, which went from Aldwins Road to Taylor's Mistake up through Sumner, it had a voter turnout of 65%. So the Ferry Mid Ward basically always kind of determines who wins the election because of the voter turnout. And I guess the initial feedback we had through the early engagement, where we did have quite a lot of people involved, was people wanted more local wards because they felt they had better chance of having local representation. So to me, that's a kind of really interesting kind of question, because the other, so that I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
Yes, the low voter turnout is a huge issue in the area I live in, and thinking of the general elections rather than specifically the council elections, I actually made it a little project of mine to go around asking a number of people and listening, especially listening. I actually heard more through listening than asking specific questions. And I was very, very disappointed in the growth of the number of people who felt completely disaffected. I mean, there are a number of trends that I've noticed in our area. Growth of people who feel they're foreigners in their own country. I mean, I'm a foreigner, and if I feel a foreigner, that's what I am. I'm Italian, and I live here, and I belong to this community as well, but that's where I come from. But the growth of people who feel completely left behind, and and these are not my words, feeling like a foreigner in your own country, they're other people's words. And the growth of the number of people I noticed who were saying they didn't bother voting, this is again national election, because they felt that the party they went voting for had already won, and it took me a while to understand that what they were talking about was the use of the polls, the opinion polls, the way they were represented in the media, and people responding to that and believing that was... So sort of they were responding to marketing, clever marketing. Very, very sad. And a lot of other people who don't understand what the issues are, and therefore they won't bother. And I think whatever the size of the ward, whether it's a small ward or a bigger ward, voter turnout is going to continue being an issue. And I just think we need to really roll our sleeves up and go out there and encourage people to participate, whatever their views. Otherwise, I know that regardless of the size of the ward, it will be the more affluent, better educated people who will bother to turn out, regardless of the size of the ward.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Don't know if that's answered your question. But
It was an interesting, it was very interesting anyway, even if you didn't. So don't panic. Phil's got a very quick question.
Look, Daniella, it's sort of like, just to clarify things, but like you, I don't know if you're aware, but in terms of the early engagement that council did around this, there was over 2,000 people made comment. So I'm just wondering if you think it might also be possible that because in fact a lot of people were involved and engaged, that in fact and that others might have decided, look, I'm not going to need to come and talk to council because overall I'm relatively okay, as well as that apathy that you referred to.
well, that may apply to those or to people in other, but I'm only speaking
Sure.
about the people that I've been able
Who you
to talk
talked
to.
with. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for coming and making your submissions.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Danielle.